días a todos, bienvenidos y bienvenidas a otra rueda de prensa de la 68 edición del Festival de Cine de San Sebastián. Hoy vamos a presentar la serie We Are Who We Are, que está en sección oficial, y para presentarla tenemos el gran honor de tener con nosotros al director y guionista Luca Guadagnino. Sí, un aplauso, ¿no? Vale. Si quieres ponerte... ¿Bien?
I can. Great.
Ok. ¿Sí? ¿Me escuchas?
I can hear very
bien?
well,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Vale, quería empezar, ahora vamos a dar paso al turno de preguntas, pero quería romper el hielo preguntando yo algo que me ha llamado mucho la atención de la serie y que creo que también se visualiza un poco en el resto de filmografía del director. Y es una cosa específica respecto a los actores y a su movimiento. Cuando estaba viendo la serie de televisión y veía especialmente, no únicamente él, pero especialmente el actor Jack Dylan Grazer, la forma que tenía de moverse, de relacionarse con los escenarios, con los objetos, con los otros personajes, de repente me recordó a aquella manera en que, por ejemplo, Timothée Chalamet en Call Me By Your Name o Ralph Fiennes en A Bigger Splash o prácticamente cualquier personaje, Suspiria, que era un tratado sobre el movimiento como tal, ¿no?, de los cuerpos, me recordó a personajes que solo me recuerdan a ellos mismos, o sea, a personajes que son definidos por los movimientos como tal y por los gestos como tal. Entonces me preguntaba, ¿cómo es el proceso de creación de personajes junto a los actores? O sea, es decir, hay un ensayo, se cogen elementos que ellos ofrecen, el señor Guadagnino tiene muy claro cómo dirigirlos en ese sentido. Me interesaba si podía hablar un poco de esto, ya que, entre otras muchísimas virtudes, es una de las que hace gala el director.
Thank you. Well, I don't think I can claim to have a conscious idea of the movement of the characters that I create along with my performers and my editors. The truth is that I feel like the most important aspect is to be able to understand the performers you work with and to create a sort of child that comes off of the performer and the character in the page, and make a sort of synthesis of the two together, so that when eventually the character is alive on screen, you can still feel, in a way, let's say, the ghost of the actor, like his or hers or theirs essence, let's say, camouflaged under the character. I have never made the trajectory to put together in my mind the characters, so as you did. I feel like every character speaks for its or hers or theirs way of being, like Frasier and Harry Hawks, the two characters from this show and A Bigger Splash. They may be kind of manic people both, but they have probably two very different cultural background and way of being. The last thing that I want to say is that I don't know if I succeed, but I try to make sure that once we put on screen something, the idea of representation collapses and you are kind of witnessing something that could be happening in reality. That's what I try.
Vamos con la ronda de preguntas. Recuerdo también que la rueda de prensa es online, que sabéis que desde casa podéis enviar preguntas online a su vez.
Hola, Madalena Chanis, de la agencia EFE. Me gustaría preguntarle, la serie explora el tema de la fluidez de géneros en los adolescentes. Quería saber, supongo que ha indagado algo en el tema, ¿por qué cree que que parece que la generación más joven está más abierta con este tema y qué opina al respecto.
Well, I honestly am not very, I'm not very drawn to topics. I don't believe that we express ourselves through the headlines of the week or of the month. And so I personally am I believe that gender fluidity is something that is part of our way of being as people. I don't believe that that's something that speaks for the now. A teenager is in de facto somebody fluid because his body, her body, their body is changing throughout the experience of morphing into an adult from a child. So there is necessarily this need of feeling everything so that you can adapt by the way in which your body changes throughout the experience of adolescence. But at the same time, I think that also the adults could claim a sense of restlessness toward what they feel they failed, the promises they failed in their upbringing, what they've lost, what they can try to recoup, and what they can fantasize about. So I don't know. I don't know if the kids today are more open to gender fluidity or not. I don't know. This is I would be kind of very careful of talking about topics that makes the headlines because maybe tomorrow that's going to be passé. So better to focus on the true identities of the characters we want to tell the story of than the topic of the week.
Hello, first of all, congratulations on the series. And my question is, how different is your approach when you make a film or when you make a TV series? Because I imagine the approach has to be very different for both formats.
Well, I've been privileged because I worked with partners that were truly open to endorse the endeavor we were making the way we were making it. I'm talking about, naturally, my producers, Lorenzo Mieli, Wild Sides and Fremantle, but also HBO and Sky Italy. And I'm not saying this to be polite. It's true. The show has been filmed and conceived as a whole, where I guess in TV you work by the episodes. In this case, we really work it as a whole, almost like a feature film. So I didn't change much. I decided with my three great directors of photography, Frédéric Wenzel, Massimiliano Cuvelier, and Yorick Lesseau, that we were going to shoot in digital, despite the fact that I constantly use 35 millimeters to film my work, because the concept of the here and now that I wanted to convey, for me, felt more urgently addressed through the usage of digital technology. But apart from this change, I wouldn't say that much changed to what I usually do.
Sí. ¿Tenemos alguna pregunta en la sala? Sí, allí.
How was it to work with actual teenagers, considering the complex subjects presented in the series?
Can you be more precise? Because I'm not sure how to answer the question as it is right now. Because to work with teenagers is to work with people that you talk with and that they are really articulate as much as an adult and they could contribute with their perspective on things. So my answer was great. I mean, fantastic people to work with. But then you added the concept of complex things, so I want to understand what you mean by that in order to answer properly.
For example, the subjects that you have already mentioned, like gender fluidity or trans people, or, well, there are different LGBT characters in the show, and mostly about those kind of subjects, and also the love interest the main character has with an older character and how they interact. And
well, the scripts we went through a beautiful process of casting the show with the great Carmen Cuba, who cast Stranger Things among other things. So she has an eye for young kids. And Carmen and we wanted to find the people that could be absolutely embodiment of the characters without sounding too old or, let's say, contrived. Jack Dylan Grazer being an established actor already, and Jordan Seaman being a debutant, I found in them two partners that were so intelligent and so open to the scripts in a very beautiful way. So probably we didn't have, there was nothing specific about the, let's say, controversial topics that are depicted in the show for more than one reason. First, because, again, it's a process. You read the script, then you show up on set, you have 100 people around you, and you build every scene by the little unity, and then we show it to you as a whole. But in the building, it's really almost like crafting a piece of wood, it's like a small part that is added to the other small part. And the maturity and the intelligence of the cast was such that they absolutely knew what was the trajectory of the characters in doing what we were doing. Also, I have always a funny story about Suspiria, which is a movie I did before this, was a horror movie, and shooting Suspiria was many laughters. We were laughing all the time because, stab, blood. And it was so funny because put the pump. It's basically difficult to understand that when you do something, when you are doing it, it's not what you are portraying, right? So what could be controversial on screen, it's just a process of making things that is basically a playground in absolute safety. We had great partners also for the underage actors in their families and in their mothers in particular, who spent the entire show with us, constantly on set, and great supporters.
Voy a aprovechar para hacer una pregunta yo también, un poco en relación a todo esto, y es esta idea de la serie está rodada en Italia, en diferentes sitios, acaba en Bolonia, por ejemplo. El director estaba rodando en casa, pero al mismo tiempo la visión que estaba añadiendo a la serie era la visión extranjera. Entonces, ¿cómo se equilibra esta idea de casa, extranjero, y además en un contexto que no es exactamente el actual, sino que es el contexto de hace 4 años? O sea, ¿cuáles son las razones que llevan a todo ello?
Well, I found that the idea of a microcosm that could tell the story of the whole would have been interesting, and also would have been narratively manageable. You have a world that is contained, but that in a way is the paradigm of a bigger and greater world. And that would have offered all of the filmmakers, from me to the actors to the production designer, the cinematographer, the editor, a possibility to really utilize the part as a whole. The other aspect is that these characters, they don't know where they belong, what's their place in life. And so to have a sort of temporary place that belongs to their identities, this little America, but temporary, and also to confront them, each other, with the outside, it felt for me very, very strong. I'm lucky because I grew up in many places, and so I personally have this sense of displacement that it helps me a lot to keep my mind open.
Okay, thank you. ¿Tenemos alguna otra pregunta en la sala? Sí.
Hello again. My question is, what was the biggest challenge as a director doing this TV series?
Well, to make sure that we could have all the people that needed to be on screen, apart from the main cast, I'm talking secondary roles and extras that look believably and convincingly American, which is sound an abstraction, but it's not. You know, like America is a specific country, it's a country of the melting pot, it's a country of a lot of cross influences, and there is not one face that defines America. Actually, there are multitudes, and so to be able to do that was complicated. Yeah.
¿Alguna pregunta?
Very
en la
shy
sala?
journalist.
Ya, os veo muy tímidos, es verdad. No sé si es el tiempo. En este ¿hubo algún momento en el que la serie no transcurría durante el periodo de campaña presidencial de Trump o fue una idea que siempre estuvo desde el principio?
Well, that was intuitive. Like generally, if you are telling a story that is contemporary, in order to avoid a sense of, let's say, abstraction, you have to give a little perspective. And then, so if you want to say something about the now, it's better to go backward a little bit so that you can contextualize. It's even simple things like what is the newspaper they're reading, what posters on the movie theater are. You know, it's very accurate. What food is in the store. What clothes you wear, what music you listen to, but also what is the context in which you are living your life. We live in every one of us lives for our sense of awareness of what is around us without necessarily constantly being aware of what is happening around us. In fact, many of these characters, things happen around them and they are not aware. I actually later realized that probably to set up the show during the campaign for the presidential election of 2016, somehow, because the series has a shift, it's really starts in a way and moves in a direction. Probably now I can possibly think is because it was about a sort of paradise lost at the end of the Obama. I don't know. It's something that I don't want to say so much because I think an audience should be open to understand whatever they need to understand. But at the same time, now that I think about it, it's possibly about a sort of falling, awakening or something.
Yo aprovecharía el momento como presidente del jurado de la sección oficial. ¿Cómo aborda este festival? Usted comenta que le gusta atestiguar la realidad en sus películas. ¿Un festival tendría que tener ese tipo de películas?
What kind of films? You said you...
Le he entendido que en sus películas le gusta atestiguar la realidad de lo que ocurre. No sé, en un festival, ¿qué es lo que más destacaría? En el Cinema al Día en concreto, en este festival. Como presidente del jurado...
¿Te refieres a las películas?
As a president of the jury, I am sorry, but I can't say anything. I would be happy to answer any questions about my beautiful job as the president of this great jury after we give the awards. My identity as a filmmaker, it's close to my identity as an audience member and former film critic, but not completely. I mean, I'm very open.
Sí, bueno, aprovecho para hacer dos preguntas. Una es si está inmerso en algún nuevo proyecto del que nos pueda hablar y, por otro lado, su opinión sobre el cambio de la normativa de los Oscar para hacerlos más inclusivos. ¿Qué opina de esos cambios?
Well, about projects, I hope to go to holiday after this lovely time in San Sebastian because I've been very busy in the last few months. Regarding the Academy set of rules, I think it's a sort of my sentiment is ambiguous because I believe that on the one hand, the idea that you have to absolutely expand the access to the filmmaking job to all sorts of people that are not immediately welcome into the community for a sort of atavic sense of exclusion, it's necessary and mandatory. So I welcome and I salute those rules with great enthusiasm. At the same time, if we analyze the way the rules are laid out, we realize that basically all movies, more or less, have set up themselves to those rules. It's not that if you have a sort of, it's not that if you cast an actor or an actress who is a member of a minority which has to be, let's say, highlighted, the movie in itself will have necessarily a progressive agenda or an agenda that we would universally call making you stepping into a better world. I don't want to name films, but there are films in which diversity is at the center of them, and yet the ideas of this film is very, very reactionary. Cinema, for me, should always be somehow a way of putting the audience in a place of excitement, exhilaration, and constant uncomfortable need of change your ideas. That's what I feel. Like when I hear people saying, I want to go to the movies and get distracted, I feel that is a sort of biased idea. I think you want to go to the movies and be, as the French would say, bouleversé. I don't understand how else you want to enjoy a movie. Like, I don't know how you don't feel bouleversé when you see a great movie by Quentin Tarantino, which is a very popular filmmaker, by the way. So it's more about the spirit of the filmmakers that is important. Having said that, access to the art of filmmaking should be open to everyone and shouldn't be, let's say, closed at the gates of who enters and who doesn't. From my little perspective, I'm proud to say that my crews, my collaborators, everybody I worked with in the last 25 years, they come from everywhere in the world and from every field, identities and spirit. So we will continue doing that.
Hola, mi pregunta es, ¿le gustaría seguir haciendo más televisión o centrarse específicamente en hacer cine para ver en una sala de cine?
The directing we are came as a sort of occasion that, in a way, happened. Like it happened. I didn't choose specifically. Now I want to make TV. So I'm open. I'm very open. It's a journey. To make films for me, it's a journey. It is my life. It is what I do. Not only as a living, because I mean, they pay for doing it, but I would do it for free. That's a secret that we shouldn't share with producers, but that's the truth. The fact being that I like to tell stories, and I don't see limitations that I should set myself upon in order to tell stories. So let's see.
Teníamos otra pregunta por aquí. ¿Eres tú otra vez? Sí.
Hello once again. Now that you talk about very different projects, one of your movies that I truly love is Call Me by Your Name, which is being talked, which people talk that there will be a sequel to it. I want to ask you if you know anything about it, or if you could give any update on that.
When the movie was out, Call Me by Your Name, at the Sundance Film Festival, and the reaction was so affecting. And then when I say we, I mean me and the great cast of the movie, we made the rounds of festivals and screenings to promote the movie. I felt so profoundly connected with these people, the people on the screen and the people portraying the people on the screen. And I had this idea, this fantasy of trying to understand how these characters would live their lives if we were to know what happened to them, as if you meet somebody after a few years and say, you know what happened to me, I did this, I did that, and you're interested in what happened to them. And so I was candid, and I said that for me, like in the cycle of Antoine Douanel by the great master François Truffaut, I felt there was a cycle of stories of these characters that could be come back to us. So it's a chronicles. It's not a sequel, and that stays the same. That's my feeling, that's what I want. We'll see.
Vale, pues con esta puerta abierta al futuro terminamos la rueda de prensa por hoy. Pido un gran aplauso para el gran director Luca Guadagnino.